I was standing beside the bar at my sister's engagement dinner, looking at a folded check with my name on it, when I realized my family had found one more way to make use of me without making room for me. The waiter had a polite expression. My sister was across the rooftop under a row of warm hanging volts, laughing into somebody's phone camera. My girlfriend stood beside me with one hand near her glass, quiet in the way she gets when she notices something before I say it out loud. I handed the folder back and said, "I think you've got the wrong person." He glanced toward the long table near the windows. "I'm sorry, sir. I was told you'd be taking care of it." I remember the sound in that moment more than anything else. Silverware against plates. A quick burst of laughter from the main table. Ice shifting in a drink somewhere close behind me. Everything ordinary. Everything easy for everyone except me. I did not argue. I did not walk over to my sister. I just sat there for a second with my hand still half raised and watched the waiter step away. By the end of that month, my father would call me about a wedding problem he could not solve. At the time, I did not know that yet. I only knew there was no seat for me at my own sister's celebration, and somehow the bill had still found its way to me. My name is Ryan. I was 29 then, working as a product engineer for a software company outside Denver. Nothing flashy. Good salary. Steady hours most weeks. The kind of job my mother still described to relatives as computer stuff because she had stopped listening after I first explained it. I had always been the easy one in my family. That was the word they used. Easy. My younger sister, Tessa, was 2 years below me, but she moved through the world like it had been arranged for her in advance. Every room adjusted around her. Every conversation found its way back to her. She had built a decent following online posting lifestyle videos and sponsored clips that made ordinary parts of her life look expensive and meaningful. My parents treated all of it like a serious career and a public service at the same time. If Tessa posted a brand deal for candles, my mother shared it everywhere. If I got a raise, my father would nod once and ask whether I was still planning to spend all day indoors. I learned early that there was no point competing for attention in my family. I was not going to win, and I did not want the kind of attention Tessa got anyway. So I became useful instead. Reliable. Calm. The one who arrived on time, brought a decent bottle of wine, stayed out of arguments, and left before things turned messy. For a while, I told myself that role suited me. Looking back, it mostly made me convenient. My girlfriend, Nora, saw it long before I did. She never pushed, never tried to turn me against my family. She would just notice things. The way my mother interrupted me but never interrupted Tessa. The way my father asked me for help with taxes, passwords, airport pickups, and home repairs, then somehow spoke about me like I was barely present in my own life. Nora paid attention to body language, timing, small patterns. She works in pediatric occupational therapy, and she has a steady patience that makes other people tell on themselves without realizing it. When Tessa got engaged, I found out the same way most people did. There was a family group text first, then an avalanche of posts. Tessa and her fiancé, Grant, smiling at a vineyard outside Sonoma with a ring held toward the camera and a caption full of hearts and filtered excitement. My mother texted me separately the next afternoon and said, "Isn't this wonderful news?" Not a question. More like a script she expected me to read from. I sent congratulations. I liked the photo. I said yes to the engagement dinner. Nora was the one who nudged me toward going. It's one night, she said that morning while sunlight came through the bathroom window and the sink still smelled faintly like mint from our toothpaste. We show up, we stay polite, and then we leave. That sounded manageable. It usually did in the morning. The dinner was held downtown on a rooftop restaurant attached to a hotel Tessa had already tagged at least 6 times before the actual event. When Nora and I got there, the host's stand was wrapped in flowers and soft candlelight. The air smelled like citrus cleaner, grilled meat, and somebody's expensive perfume. Music drifted in from ceiling speakers, low enough that you had to lean slightly toward people to hear them. There was one long table set near the back, dressed in cream linen and little gold name cards written in Tessa's looping handwriting. Everyone important seemed to have a place. My parents, our aunt and uncle, Grant's parents, 2 women from Tessa's bridal party, a cousin I had not seen in 3 years. Even a local photographer Tessa had apparently invited because he was great for content. Nora looked once, then looked again. There was no card for me. No card for her either. I felt the heat come up my neck first. Not anger yet. More that flat, familiar feeling of having walked into a joke a few seconds too late. Nora said, very gently, maybe they added another table? There was no other table. Tessa came toward us a moment later with Grant beside her and a drink in her hand, bright and sparkling and perfectly on display. She kissed the air near Nora's cheek, squeezed my arm like we were old friends, and said, "Ryan, you made it." I said, "Looks like we're not seated." She gave the quickest glance toward the table, then back at me. No embarrassment. No apology. Just calculation. "Oh," she said. "Yeah, so the main table filled up faster than I thought. But there's space near the bar. It's actually better over there. More relaxed. More relaxed. Like we had been upgraded." Grant gave me a little shrug that was supposed to mean nothing personal. My mother, already seated, looked over from the center of the table and then looked away again. That part stayed with me. She knew. She had known before I arrived. Nora thanked Tessa in that calm, level voice of hers, and we moved toward the cocktail tables near the edge of the rooftop. From there, I could see everything without being part of any of it. The skyline was turning gold with late evening light. Servers moved in clean black uniforms between tables carrying trays of drinks with herbs and flower petals floating on top. At the main table, my father leaned in close to hear Grant's mother. Tessa laughed with her whole body, one hand touching her hair, the other resting where everyone could see the ring. I sat down on a high stool and adjusted my jacket like that would somehow make me feel less misplaced. Nora rested her hand lightly against my knee under the table. Neither of us said much. Then dinner started, and I watched the first course go to everyone else. Then I waited. It took another 15 minutes before anyone brought us food. By then, the main table was already into the first round of toasts. I could hear my father's voice carrying across the rooftop in that warm, public way he has when he wants to sound like a better man than he is in private. He talked about Tessa being fearless, creative, full of life. My mother dabbed the corner of one eye with a napkin. Grant kept one hand on the back of Tessa's chair like they were posing for an engagement spread. A server finally set down 2 small plates in front of Nora and me and quietly said, "I'm sorry for the delay." He said it the way people do when they know exactly what is happening but have no power to correct it. The food was already cooling around the edges. Some kind of chicken skewer, roasted vegetables, a scoop of potatoes going dry under the lights. I remember cutting into it and realizing I was not hungry anymore. Nora took one bite, set down her fork, and looked out over the city for a second. The wind lifted a strand of hair across her cheek. She tucked it back and said, "You do know this is not an accident." I looked at my glass. I know. That was the first honest thing I had said about my family in a long time. For years, I had cleaned up their behavior in my own mind before I let myself examine it. I called things misunderstandings when they were patterns. I called things oversights when they were choices. I told myself Tessa was just self-involved, my mother was just protective, my father was just conflict avoidant. Those explanations let me keep showing up without having to admit what showing up was costing me. That night, under the lights and the music and the carefully staged celebration, the pattern finally looked simple. They had made room for everyone they wanted near them. They had not made room for me. I stayed until the end because leaving early would have become the story. In my family, if Tessa embarrassed you, that was regrettable. If you reacted to it, that was unforgivable. So I stayed. I smiled when required. I nodded when spoken to. I stood when everyone gathered for a group photo and took my place near the outer edge where half my shoulder would probably be cropped anyway. I shook Grant's hand when he came over near the end of the night and said, "Glad you could make it, man." It was the kind of sentence that sounds polite until you look at it closely. Then the waiter brought me to check. After he walked away, Nora picked up her glass, took a small sip, and said, "That was deliberate too." I gave a short laugh through my nose. "You think?" "I think your sister assumed you would either pay it quietly or refuse and look cheap." That landed because it was probably true. I looked over at the main table. Tessa was leaning into another photo, one arm around my mother, face turned toward the camera in practiced angles. She had already moved on. In her mind, the evening was a success. Nora said, "Do you want to leave?" I looked at the leather folder sitting 2 tables away where the waiter had set it down after she redirected him. I looked at the people at the long table, all of them bathed in amber light, all of them so comfortable inside a story where I was useful but optional. "Yes," I said. "I do." We left without announcing it. The elevator ride down was quiet except for a faint hum from the motor and the smell of someone's cologne lingering in the mirrored walls. Once we were outside, the air felt cooler than it had on the rooftop. Traffic moved past in smooth lines of red and white. Somewhere down the block, music drifted from another restaurant, softer and less self-important than the one we had just left. We walked half a block before Nora reached for my hand. I said I should have known. She did not answer right away. She has a habit of letting a sentence settle before she touches it. Then she said, "You probably did know. You just kept hoping it would be different this time." That was closer to the truth. The next morning, we went out for breakfast at a place near our apartment where the coffee comes in thick white mugs and the booths still have tiny tears in the vinyl. The room smelled like butter, coffee, and syrup warming on the griddle. There was a family with 2 small kids in the corner, and one of them kept tapping a spoon against a jelly packet. Ordinary sounds. Steady sounds. I remember being grateful for them. Nora waited until our food came before saying anything. Then she looked at me across the table and said, "They count on you not reacting." I stirred my coffee even though I did not need to. "Maybe." "No," she said. "They do." I looked up. She was not angry. That was part of what made it hard to dismiss. She was calm, thoughtful, the way someone sounds when they are naming a fact, not starting a fight. "They know Tessa can do almost anything and still be forgiven," she said. "And they know you'll absorb it, smooth it over, stay polite, and come back next time. That's why nobody fixed the seating. That's why nobody corrected the check. They counted on the version of you that makes this easy for them." I sat with that for a while. The waitress came by with more coffee. A couple near the window got up to leave. Someone behind me laughed at something low and harmless. I remember all of it because the conversation itself was so still. "You're saying I'm part of it," I said. Nora shook her head. "I'm saying you've been trained for it." That stayed with me longer than anything else. Over the next few weeks, I tried to move on from the dinner, but the family machine kept operating like it always did. The group chat filled with links, photos, and little updates about the wedding. Tessa posted engagement portraits taken at golden hour in a field outside Boulder. My mother texted me a picture of centerpiece ideas and asked what looked more elegant, as if my input mattered on details while my actual place in the family did not. My invite arrived late. It was bent along one corner, and instead of being addressed properly, it had Ryan plus guest written across the envelope in dark pen. Not even Nora's name. Just guest. I stood in our kitchen turning it over in my hand while the dishwasher ran behind me. Nora looked at it and said, "That's rude." I gave a tired smile. At least this time, I made the envelope. I called my mother that evening because some part of me still wanted to hear a reasonable explanation. Maybe the printed invite got lost. Maybe someone helping with the mail had rushed. Maybe there was still a version of this I could excuse. She answered on the second ring, cheerful in the way people sound when they are already prepared to minimize something. "Oh good, you got it," she said. "Yeah," I said. "Why doesn't it have Nora's name?" A pause. Not a confused pause. A measured one. "Well, honey, Tessa was trying to keep things simple. You know how much she has going on. She's met Nora dozens of times." "Of course she has." "Then why write guest?" My mother exhaled softly, like I was forcing her into patience she had not budgeted for. "Ryan, please don't start. It's an invitation, not a legal notice." That told me what I needed to know. I said, right? Then I ended the call before she could tell me I was being sensitive. That word followed me through my family like a stain no one else could see. If I stayed silent, I was distant. If I asked a fair question, I was sensitive. If Tessa lied, exaggerated, insulted, or took up all the oxygen in the room, she was expressive, emotional, under pressure, doing her best. I started answering messages less often after that. Not to punish anyone. I just stopped volunteering myself for little cuts I already understood. I still sent my father a birthday gift. I still texted my niece after a school recital because I had promised her I would come next time. I still behaved like a decent person. But I stopped pretending that decency required unlimited access. Nora noticed the shift without commenting on it much. That was one of the things I valued most in her. She never pushed me to make a grand statement. She just respected the quiet versions of change. If I set my phone face down during dinner and left it there, she noticed. If I let a family text sit unanswered for a full day, she noticed that too. But she did not praise it or turn it into progress talk. She simply let the silence do its work. Then came the shower. Tessa decided she wanted a co-ed event because a traditional bridal shower felt, in her words online, a little dated. What she really wanted was a room full of people, enough angles for photos, and another chance to turn a private milestone into content. Nora received a mailed invitation in a cream box with tissue paper inside and a little candle labeled Bride ERA. I got a text. It said, "You can come too if you want LOL. Registry link below." I stared at it for a while before showing Nora. She read it, set my phone back on the counter, and said, "You don't have to go." I know. Then don't go for the wrong reason. That was another thing she did. She never told me what the right decision was. She just made sure I was not making it out of guilt. I still went. Part of me wanted the evidence. Not in any formal sense. I was not gathering a case yet. I just think by then I needed to stop relying on memory softened by time. I needed to see clearly what happened when I showed up, because every time I tried to explain it to myself later, I made it gentler than it was. The shower was held at a winery outside the city, the kind of place with gravel paths, white fences, and decorative signs leaning against barrels near the entrance. The afternoons smelled like cut grass, sweet wine, and sunscreen. Someone had set up a balloon arch in muted colors near a wall printed with Tessa and Grant's initials. There was a table of favors, a photo station, and a display of gifts arranged neatly enough to look like they were already waiting for the camera. Nora got pulled almost immediately into one of Tessa's games with the bridal party. I stayed toward the side with a plastic glass of sangria I did not want and watched people perform happiness at each other. Grant's friends stood near the vineyard rows talking too loudly. My mother floated from group to group in a wide-brimmed hat, smoothing details no one had asked her to smooth. Tessa sat at the center of it all, opening boxes slowly enough for pictures, holding each gift up before setting it aside. I might have gotten through the whole thing quietly if I had not stepped behind the display table to throw away my cup. That was when I heard Tessa. She was standing with one of her bridesmaids near a stack of gift bags, half turned away from the crowd, laughing in that loose, careless way people do when they think the target of the joke is nowhere close. "Ryan is so awkward," she said. "He honestly feels like a background extra in his own life." The bridesmaid laughed. Tessa kept going. I seriously did not think he'd show up again. Nora probably dragged him. There was another laugh. Then the bridesmaid said something I could not make out. Tessa answered, clear as anything, "Please. He's like a discount version of Grant." I stopped moving. It was such a stupid sentence, and somehow that made it worse. Not even a real criticism. Just something petty and lazy and practiced. The kind of line she had probably been using about me for years in rooms I never entered. I set the cup down on the nearest flat surface because my hand had tightened around it without me noticing. When Nora found me a few minutes later, she took one look at my face and did not ask what was wrong in front of anyone. She just said, "Do you want to go?" "Yes," I said. We walked to the parking lot in silence. The gravel shifted under our shoes. Somewhere behind us, people clapped at something inside. I could smell warm dust rising off the road and the faint sour sweetness of spilled wine near the bins by the service entrance. Once we were inside the car and the doors were closed, Nora buckled her seat belt and waited. I put both hands on the steering wheel, looked straight ahead, and said, I heard her. Nora did not interrupt. So I told her. Not just what Tessa had said that afternoon, but other things too. Things I had filed away and kept minimizing. The Christmas when I bought Tessa a refurbished laptop because she said she needed one for school, and 2 weeks later she sold it online. The holiday dinner where she told people I was between things when I had just been promoted. The way my parents always found a way to excuse her and explain me. I heard myself saying it all in a calm voice, and somehow that made it sound even more final. When I was done, Nora sat quietly for a second, looking out the windshield. Then she said, "You don't have to keep auditioning for people who already decided your role." I leaned back against the seat. For a few seconds, the only sound in the car was the tick of the cooling engine and distant laughter carrying across the parking lot. Then I started the car, pulled out onto the road, and drove home without turning the radio on. That night, after we got back, my mother called. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Her voice had that careful softness people use when they are about to ask for something while pretending they are checking in. "Sweetheart," she said, "Tessa had a little idea for the wedding, and I told her I'd run it by you first." I stood in the kitchen with one hand on the counter and looked at the dark window above the sink. "What idea?" There was a small pause. Then she said, "She was wondering whether you might be willing to help with some of the wedding expenses." I did not say anything. Nora looked up from the couch when she saw my face change. My mother kept going, gentle and reasonable and completely serious. Not the whole thing, of course. Just one part. Maybe the photography or the bar. Something meaningful. I kept my voice level. "You want me to pay for a wedding I barely seem invited to?" "Oh, Ryan, don't be like that." I closed my eyes for a second. And then I listened while she explained why family helps family, why Tessa was under pressure, why this would be a lovely gesture, why I should not hold on to little misunderstandings when such a happy day was coming. When she finally stopped talking, the kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator motor kick on. I said, "I'll think about it." Then I put the phone face down and waited. I did not answer anyone for 3 days. Not my mother, not Tessa, not the group chat that kept lighting up with pictures and updates about cake tastings and dress fittings. I left my phone on the kitchen counter most of the time and let the messages arrive without reacting to them. The first evening felt strange. The silence made the apartment seem larger than usual. You do not realize how much space a constant stream of notifications fills until you remove it. Nora noticed, of course. She was sitting at the small table near the window grading therapy notes when she said, "That's new." I looked over from the sink where I was rinsing a coffee mug. "What is?" "You leaving your phone there?" I dried the mug slowly and set it on the rack. "I'm trying something." She nodded once and went back to her paperwork. That was enough encouragement. By the second day, the quiet began to feel less like avoidance and more like control. I answered work messages, spoke with my team, and finished a feature proposal I had been putting off for weeks. Without the constant interruptions, I moved through tasks faster than usual. My manager even sent a short note that afternoon saying the documentation I had turned in was the clearest version he had seen. Small things like that add up. For years, I had assumed the tension in my head was just part of being busy. Once the noise from my family faded, I realized how much of it had never belonged to my job at all. Late that afternoon, Nora came into the kitchen and leaned against the counter while I was making tea. "You look lighter," she said. "That obvious?" "A little." I poured the hot water and handed her a cup. She took it, then said, "So what are you going to do about the wedding?" That was the first time anyone had asked the question directly without pressure attached to it. I thought for a moment before answering. "I'm going to slow everything down." She tilted her head slightly. "How?" "I'm not going to react emotionally anymore," I said. "If they want something, they can explain it clearly. And if it involves money, time, or my name being used publicly, it will follow rules." Nora smiled faintly. "Rules?" I nodded. For the first time since the engagement dinner, my thinking felt structured again. Not angry, not impulsive, just organized. "Step 1, I said. I find out exactly what's real and what isn't. Step 2, I stop responding to assumptions. And step 3, if they involve me in anything public, I verify it myself." Nora took a small sip of tea. "That sounds very you." I shrugged. I design systems for a living. If something keeps breaking, the first step is understanding the inputs. That evening, I finally checked my phone. There were 17 missed calls. 9 from my mother, 4 from my father, 3 from Tessa, 1 from a number I did not recognize. The messages were almost identical. My mother's texts were long and emotional, full of phrases like family needs to come together and your sister is overwhelmed. My father's were shorter, practical. Call your mom. We should talk. This doesn't need to become a bigger thing. Tessa's message was only one line. It's just PR, don't make this weird. I stared at that for a while. It was referring to a video she had posted the day before. Nora had shown it to me earlier that afternoon. In the video, Tessa was standing in what looked like a luxury event hall, spinning slowly in a white dress sample while a caption floated across the screen. Couldn't have locked down our dream venue without my amazing brother Ryan stepping in. Thousands of people had already liked it. Several comments read, "Your brother sounds incredible. Family support is everything. Men like this are rare." I had not given Tessa $1. I had not even agreed to help. And yet my name had already been turned into a promotional credit. That was when step 1 of my little system started working. Because if Tessa believed she had secured the venue, and the venue believed she had secured the venue, and the internet believed I had paid for it, then there had to be documentation somewhere explaining what actually happened. So I started looking. I searched the venue name first. It was a historic estate about an hour outside the city. Beautiful property. Old conservatory, renovated ballroom. The kind of place influencers loved because every corner looked like it had been designed for photographs. The booking calendar on their site showed something interesting. Every Saturday for the next 4 months was already reserved, including the date Tessa had announced publicly. That meant one of 3 things was true. Either Tessa had secured the venue months earlier and the website had not updated yet, or she had negotiated a private exception. Or she had never booked it at all. I opened my laptop and checked the metadata on the promotional photos she had used in the video. They were from the venue's media kit. Public images, not event photos. I leaned back in the chair slowly. Step 1 had given me an answer. Tessa had never booked the venue. She had posted about it first, probably for attention, possibly for a sponsorship, maybe hoping the venue would simply cooperate after the fact. That approach might work with small brands. It does not work with historic estates that book weddings a year in advance. I closed the laptop. Nora was watching me from the couch. "You figured something out," she said. I nodded. She doesn't have a venue. Nora's eyebrows lifted, but she posted that she does. Exactly. I sat quietly for a moment, thinking through the implications. This was the first real shift in the entire situation. For months, I had been reacting to Tessa's behavior. Now I understood the mechanism behind it. Her life online depended on projecting certainty before reality existed. She posted the story first. Then she tried to force the world to catch up with it. That strategy works until the details start asking questions. Nora spoke again. "So what happens when the venue asks for a deposit?" I looked at the phone on the table. Apparently, I said slowly, "That part hasn't happened yet." Right on cue, the phone lit up again. My father's name appeared on the screen. I answered. His voice sounded tired, which was unusual. "Ryan," he said. "Thanks for picking up. What's going on?" He exhaled. "There's a situation with the wedding." I did not speak. He continued. "The venue fell through." I leaned back in the chair. "How?" "Something about deposits and confirmation emails," he said. "Your sister thought everything was arranged, but apparently it wasn't finalized." "Apparently." "Your sister is really upset," he said carefully. "Your mom's trying to calm her down." I could hear voices in the background. My mother speaking quickly. Someone pacing. Then my father said the sentence I had been expecting since the engagement dinner. "She thinks maybe you could help fix it." I looked across the room at Nora. She had already guessed. I said nothing for a moment. Then I asked, very calmly, "What exactly do you think I can fix?" My father hesitated. "You're good with this kind of thing," he said. "Research, organization, finding solutions. You always were." There it was again. Not appreciation. Utility. I leaned forward slightly in my chair. "I'll think about it," I said. He sounded relieved. "Good," he said quickly. "That's all we're asking." We ended the call a minute later. Nora walked over and sat across from me. So, she said, "What are you thinking?" I closed the laptop and folded my hands together. For the first time, I said quietly, "They actually need something I control." And I considered the question carefully. Then I said, "I'm going to help." Nora studied my face for a moment. "You don't sound angry." "I'm not." "What are you then?" I leaned back in the chair. Prepared. Outside, the evening light was fading behind the trees, and the room had grown quiet again. I picked up my phone. Then I started making a list. I started with a notebook. Not because I needed one, but because writing things down slows your thinking in a useful way. When you see steps on paper, the emotion drains out of them. What remains is process. Nora was on the couch reading when I sat down at the table with a pen. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Organizing," I said. She didn't press further. I wrote 3 short lines at the top of the page. Step 1, verify the facts. Step 2, control the information. Step 3, let people act on their own decisions. Nothing dramatic. No revenge language. Just structure. The facts were already mostly clear. Tessa had posted publicly that she had secured a luxury venue. The venue had never confirmed the booking. My name had been attached to the claim as the person who made it happen. That meant the story being told online was ahead of reality. All I had to do was let reality catch up. But first, I needed a clearer timeline. The next morning, I sent a short email to the venue using a normal address, not my personal one. The message was simple: "Hello. I'm trying to confirm whether the June 17th wedding reservation for Tessa and Grant was finalized. I've seen the venue mentioned publicly and wanted to verify the booking details. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I just asked a question." The reply arrived about an hour later. "We do not have a confirmed reservation under those names for that date. Our June calendar has been fully booked since January." That was the confirmation I needed. I closed the email and leaned back. Nora looked up from her laptop. "Well, they were never booked," I said. "So she posted it anyway." "Yes." Nora nodded slowly. "That tracks." I wrote another line under step 1. Venue not reserved. Public claim already posted. Then I moved to step 2. Controlling information doesn't mean lying. It just means deciding when and where details appear. Tessa had already created a public narrative that I helped secure the venue. That meant she expected me to play along when people asked questions. So I did the opposite. I stayed quiet. No corrections. No confirmations. No comments online. Silence leaves space for reality to surface naturally. Over the next few days, messages started arriving again. My mother first. "Honey, have you thought about helping with the venue situation? Your sister is really struggling." Then Tessa. "Ryan, please call me. This venue thing is getting stressful." Then Grant. "Hey man, any chance you know someone who can help us lock something down?" Every message had the same tone. Urgent. Polite. Slightly desperate. None of them acknowledged the earlier lie about me paying for the venue. That detail was apparently still convenient. Nora watched the texts come in while we were eating dinner one night. "You're not answering," she said. "Not yet. What are you waiting for?" For the situation to become clear enough that everyone understands the stakes. She considered that for a moment. "You mean when the wedding date gets close enough that they can't pretend everything is fine?" Exactly. Time has a way of clarifying priorities. 2 weeks passed. During that time, my work project expanded quickly. The feature proposal I had submitted was approved by the product director, and I was asked to lead the development timeline. I spent long days in meetings, building schedules, assigning tasks, writing documentation. It was calm, structured work. Problems had definitions. Solutions had steps. Family problems rarely operate that way, but systems thinking still applies. One evening, about 3 weeks before the wedding, my father called again. I answered this time. "Ryan," he said, sounding more serious than before. "We really need to talk." "What happened?" "The venue situation is worse than we thought." I leaned back in the chair. "Tell me." Tessa assumed she had a reservation because she had been talking with the venue manager by email, he said. But apparently those emails were just inquiries. That sounds right. She already told hundreds of people that location was confirmed. I saw. There was a long pause. Then he said quietly, "She's panicking." I waited. "She's saying you might be able to help," he continued. "You're good with logistics. Research. Finding solutions." There it was again. The same role they had always assigned me. Fixer. Organizer. Reliable background support. Except this time, I had already verified the problem. And I knew exactly how it would unfold. "I can take a look," I said. The relief in his voice was immediate. "Thank you. That means a lot." After we hung up, Nora watched me for a moment. "You're really going to help?" "Yes." She folded her arms lightly. "In what way?" "In a structured way," I said. Then I opened my laptop again. If Tessa wanted a venue, the first step was identifying what was actually available. So I searched. Every wedding venue within 200 miles. Hotels, event barns, country clubs, gardens, estates. Most of them were already booked. June is peak season. The few that still had openings were either small or available at unusual times. Friday afternoons, Sunday mornings. Not the kind of options influencers dream about posting. Eventually, I found one interesting listing. A large estate outside the city that had recently been renovated, but was not officially open for weddings yet. The property was photogenic, dramatic, and perfect for pictures. But the booking page clearly stated, "Inquiries for future seasons only. No current reservations. No events allowed yet." I stared at the page for a while. Then I smiled slightly. Because it was exactly the kind of place Tessa would fall in love with immediately. Beautiful, exclusive, and technically unavailable. I wrote the name of the estate in my notebook. Under step 2, I added another line. Offer a solution that looks perfect but requires verification. Then I closed the notebook. Nora raised an eyebrow. "You look like you solved something." "I found a venue she'll love. And she'll have to confirm it herself." Nora studied my face for a few seconds. "You're letting the system run." "Yes." Meaning I'm not sabotaging anything," I said calmly. "I'm just stepping back and letting people be responsible for their own decisions." That night, I finally responded to Tessa's messages. "I might know a place that could work. Let me check a few things." Her reply came in less than 10 seconds. "You're literally saving the wedding." "Thank you." I set the phone face down. Then I waited. 3 days later, Tessa asked if we could meet. She suggested a cafe near my office, one of those places with big windows, wooden tables, and a constant hum of quiet conversation. The smell of roasted coffee beans filled the room when I walked in, and the late afternoon light came through the glass in long, soft bands. Tessa was already there. She had chosen a seat facing the door so she could see people arriving. Her phone was on the table beside her coffee, screen facing up. I noticed the camera lens had been cleaned recently. That detail alone told me she had already considered filming something if the conversation went well. When she saw me, she smiled quickly. "Ryan," she said, standing halfway to hug me. I returned the gesture politely, then sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She stirred her drink even though it had no sugar in it. Finally, she said, "First of all, thank you for even meeting with me. You said the venue situation was urgent." "It is," she said quickly. "Everything's kind of spiraling right now." Her voice was softer than usual. Not emotional exactly, but controlled. I had seen her do this before when she needed someone's cooperation. "The place we thought we had booked says they never confirmed the reservation," she continued. "Apparently there was a miscommunication with the deposit." I nodded once. "That happens." She watched my reaction carefully. "I told Mom you might know someone," she said. "I know a few people who plan events," I said. "But options are limited this close to the date." "I know," she said quickly. "That's why I really need your help." The sentence hung there between us. For a moment, the cafe noise faded into the background. Cups clinked somewhere near the counter. Someone laughed near the window. I folded my hands on the table. "There may be a property available," I said. Her posture changed instantly. "Seriously?" "Yes." "What kind of property?" "A private estate about an hour outside the city," I said. "Large grounds. Conservatory. Old ballroom." Her eyes widened. "That sounds perfect." "It's not officially open yet," I added calmly. Her excitement paused for half a second. What does that mean? It means they're still preparing for events, I said. But sometimes owners allow limited early bookings. She leaned forward. Do you know the owner? No, I said honestly. But I know someone who has worked with the property. That part was technically true. Tessa nodded quickly, already visualizing the outcome. This could actually work, she said. Can you connect me? I can send you the information. That would be amazing. She reached across the table and squeezed my arm lightly. Seriously, Ryan. I know things have been weird lately, but this means a lot. I did not react to the comment. Instead, I opened my phone and forwarded her the listing page for the estate. The photos were exactly what she expected. Tall ivy-covered walls, large windows, a curved staircase in the main hall. Every image looked like it belonged in a bridal magazine. Tessa scrolled through them quickly. This place is gorgeous, she said. It photographs well. That's exactly what we need. She immediately opened Instagram and began typing something into her notes app. What are you doing? I asked. Just drafting a caption idea, she said casually. For when it's confirmed. I watched her for a moment. Make sure it's actually confirmed first. She waved the comment away lightly. Of course! The conversation shifted after that. She asked about work. I answered briefly. She talked about the dress fittings and the wedding schedule. Not once did she mention the earlier post claiming I had already paid for the venue. Eventually, she stood up. Thank you again, she said. You seriously saved us. I gave you a lead, I replied. Same thing. She hugged me again and left quickly, already typing messages on her phone as she walked toward the door. I stayed at the table for another minute. Then I finished my coffee and went back to the office. That evening, Nora asked how the meeting went. She liked the venue. That fast. It fits the image she wants. And the booking? She hasn't confirmed anything yet. Nora tilted her head slightly. But she thinks she will. Yes. She considered that quietly. So what happens next? Next, I said, she decides whether to verify the reservation. Nora smiled faintly. And if she doesn't? Then the timeline handles it. 2 days later, Tessa posted another video. This time it showed the estate photos with music playing softly in the background. The caption read, Dream venue secured. Sometimes the universe sends the right people at the right moment.
My name was tagged again. Comments started appearing almost immediately. Your brother is incredible. Family support like this is everything. This venue is stunning. Nora showed me the post while we were making dinner. She didn't verify it, she said. No, and the wedding is in 3 weeks. Yes. We stood in the kitchen quietly for a moment while the pasta boiled. Do you feel bad? Nora asked. I thought about the question carefully. No, I said finally. Why not? Because nothing I told her was false, I said calmly. The property exists. The listing is real. The only thing she hasn't done is confirm the booking. Nora nodded slowly. That's an important difference. Yes. The next week passed quickly. Work became busier as our project entered development. My team spent long days reviewing code, solving small technical problems, and preparing for a product demo scheduled later that month. Meanwhile, Tessa continued posting updates online. Wedding countdowns, dress previews, decor ideas. The estate venue appeared in several of the posts. Every time my name appeared in the captions, I never commented. Then, 10 days before the wedding, my father called again. His voice sounded tired. Ryan, he said, something's wrong with the venue. I leaned back in my chair. What happened? Tessa tried to finalize the reservation this morning, he said. The property manager says they aren't hosting events yet. I closed my eyes briefly. That's what the listing said. She thought it was already arranged. I told her it needed confirmation. My father exhaled slowly. She's saying you handled it. No, I said calmly. I sent her the information. There was a long silence on the phone. Finally, he said, so the wedding doesn't have a venue. That appears to be the situation. Another silence. Then he said quietly, your mother is going to call you. I looked across the room where Nora was reading on the couch. I imagine she will, I said. And then I waited. My mother called the next morning. It was early. The kind of early where the light is still pale and the neighborhood hasn't fully woken up yet. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop open, reviewing notes for a product meeting later that morning. The phone buzzed against the table. I already knew who it would be. I answered on the second ring. Ryan, my mother said, her voice tight. We need to talk. Good morning, Mom. This isn't funny. I took a slow sip of coffee before answering. What's going on? You know exactly what's going on, she said. Tessa says you told her the estate venue was secured. No, I said calmly. I told her it was a possibility and that she needed to confirm it. She says you handled the arrangements. I sent her the listing. Silence. Then she said, the owner told them they aren't hosting events yet. The entire wedding party showed up yesterday, trying to look at the property. That must have been awkward. Ryan, she said sharply, this is your sister's wedding. I'm aware. You should have made sure it was booked. I leaned back in the chair and looked out the kitchen window. The street outside was quiet. A dog walker passed slowly along the sidewalk. Mom, I said evenly. Did Tessa ever tell you she had already announced the venue online before confirming it? That's not the issue. It's exactly the issue. She trusted you. No, I said quietly. She trusted the version of me that fixes problems after she creates them. That landed harder than anything else I had said. My mother didn't respond immediately. When she did speak again, her voice was lower. So you're saying you knew this would happen? I knew she needed to verify the reservation, and you didn't help her do that. I gave her the information. There was another long pause. Then she said something softer, almost pleading. She's humiliated right now. I set the coffee mug down. Mom, she humiliated herself when she told thousands of people the venue was confirmed. She thought it was. She didn't check. Another silence stretched across the call. Finally, she said, are you proud of this? I thought about the question carefully. No, I said. That answer surprised her. Then why didn't you stop it? Because this is the first time the consequences belong to her. My mother exhaled slowly. 200 people were invited to that wedding. Yes. And now there's nowhere to hold it. That's true. And you're just going to sit there calmly while everything falls apart. I looked at the notebook still sitting on the table beside my laptop. The 3 steps were still written across the top of the page. Verify the facts. Control the information. Let people act on their own decisions. Yes, I said. The call ended a few minutes later without resolution. I closed the laptop and went to work. By the time I returned home that evening, the situation had already begun spreading online. The first post appeared around mid-afternoon. Someone who had been invited to the wedding shared a confused message. Does anyone know if the ceremony location changed? The estate gates were closed when we tried to visit today. Then another person commented underneath. I thought the venue wasn't even open yet. Within hours, the questions multiplied. Screenshots circulated of Tessa's earlier posts claiming the venue was secured. Someone even found the estate's public booking page and shared the line stating they were not hosting events yet. The internet does not need much encouragement to connect dots. When I arrived home, Nora was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She looked up when I walked in. It's everywhere, she said. I figured it would be. People are asking what happened. I'm sure they are. She turned the screen slightly so I could see it. One comment read, did the influencer fake her own wedding venue? Another, this is why you confirm contracts before posting. I took off my jacket and set it on the chair. Has she said anything? Nora shook her head. Just one story. She tapped the screen again. Tessa had posted a plain black background with white text. Unexpected venue issues. Please respect our privacy while we work through this. I sat down across from Nora. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she asked quietly, do you feel like you won? I considered that. No, then what do you feel? Relieved. Why? Because the truth is finally visible without me explaining it. Nora nodded slowly. That evening, my father called again. His voice sounded older than usual. Ryan, he said, I spoke with your sister. I assumed you would. She's devastated. I imagined so. She says you set her up. I sent her a listing. You knew it wasn't available. I knew it required confirmation. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something unexpected. She's always relied on you to fix things. Yes. And this time you didn't. No, another pause. Then he sighed. Maybe that's what she needed. That was the closest thing to understanding I had heard from him in years. The wedding itself never happened that month. Without a venue, caterers canceled. Vendors pulled out. Guests began requesting refunds for travel arrangements. Some sponsors quietly ended their partnerships with Tessa after learning the venue announcement had been inaccurate. Within a week, her follower count dropped by several thousand. But the biggest shift happened privately. My parents stopped calling every day. The family group chat went quiet. For the first time in years, no one asked me to fix anything. And the silence felt different this time. Not empty, just settled. A few days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. It was from my cousin Daniel. Inside was a photograph. He had been at the estate the afternoon, everything unraveled, and had taken a picture from the parking area. In the photo, Tessa stood near the closed gates in her rehearsal dress, phone pressed to her ear, mascara streaked from crying. Daniel had written a small note on the back. Sometimes reality shows up without filters. I placed the photograph inside my desk drawer. Not as a trophy, just as documentation. Because systems only change when the pattern becomes visible. And this time, everyone had finally seen it. The next month, Nora and I signed a lease for a small house outside the city. It had a quiet street, tall trees in the yard, and a kitchen big enough for 2 people to cook comfortably at the same time. The first evening we moved in, we opened the windows and let the air move through the rooms. No phones buzzing, no family group chat lighting up the night, just the soft sound of wind through the trees. For the first time in a long while, everything felt orderly again. And that was enough. The first quiet morning in the new house arrived a few weeks later. I woke up early without an alarm, which had started happening more often since we moved. The neighborhood was still half asleep. A few birds were moving through the trees outside, and somewhere down the street a sprinkler clicked slowly across a lawn. I walked into the kitchen and made coffee. The counters still smelled faintly like the wood cleaner Nora had used the night before. We had spent most of the evening unpacking boxes and deciding where ordinary things should live. Plates in the cabinet above the sink, towels in the drawer near the stove, small routines forming in a place that felt like it belonged to us. I poured coffee into 2 mugs and set one beside Nora's usual chair at the table. She came in a minute later, hair still messy from sleep. "You're up early," she said. "So are you." She sat down and wrapped both hands around the mug. For a moment, we just listened to the quiet. It was a different kind of silence than the one I had created when I stopped answering my family's messages weeks earlier. That silence had felt like distance. This one felt like space. "Any updates?" Nora asked after a while. "From my family?" She nodded. I shook my head. No calls. No messages. That had been the pattern since the wedding situation collapsed. Tessa had posted one final video about a week afterward. A short, carefully edited clip explaining that the wedding would be postponed due to unexpected venue complications. The tone was calm, almost reflective. Comments under the video were mixed. Some supportive, some critical, many simply curious. After that, the post slowed. Then they stopped. I hadn't spoken to her since the morning my mother called. Not out of anger, just because neither of us had reached out again. My father sent a short message a few days later asking if the move to the new house had gone well. I replied with a simple yes, it did. Thanks. Nothing else followed. Nora took a sip of coffee and looked around the kitchen. "You seem settled," she said. "I think I am." What changed the most? I thought about that for a moment. Perspective, I said finally. For years I kept thinking the situation with my family was temporary. Like if I just stayed patient, things would eventually balance out. And now I understand that some systems don't correct themselves unless people stop supporting them. Nora nodded slowly. That's a very engineer way of explaining family dynamics. I smiled. It's the only framework I know. Later that morning, I cleaned out the last few boxes in the small office room at the back of the house. Old paperwork, spare cables, a stack of notebooks from previous projects. Near the bottom of one box, I found the photograph Daniel had mailed. Tessa standing outside the closed estate gates, phone in her hand. The moment when everything she had built online finally collided with reality. I looked at it for a few seconds. Then I placed it in the bottom drawer of the desk and closed it. Not because I needed to remember the moment, but because I didn't need to carry it around anymore. That afternoon, Nora and I took a walk through the neighborhood. The sidewalks curved through rows of tall maples, and the air had that early summer warmth that makes people slow their pace without realizing it. Halfway down the block, we passed a couple standing in their driveway, looking at a pile of renovation materials. The man was explaining something to a contractor while the woman studied a set of plans. When they noticed us walking past, they both smiled and nodded. Simple neighbor behavior. Ordinary life. As we continued down the street, Nora slipped her hand into mine. "Do you ever think about talking to them again?" she asked. "My family? Yes. I'm sure we will eventually," I said. When when the conversations are about real things instead of roles. She looked at me curiously. What do you mean by roles? For most of my life, I said, I was the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who fixed problems without asking questions. And now I'm just a person who decides what he participates in. Nora squeezed my hand lightly. That sounds healthier. I think so. We walked another block before she spoke again. You know, she said, people like your sister aren't actually that rare. I know. I see families like that all the time at the clinic, she continued. One person takes up all the oxygen, and everyone else quietly adjusts around them. What usually changes it? She thought for a moment. Usually someone steps out of the pattern. I nodded. That's what it felt like. By the time we returned to the house, the sun was starting to lower behind the trees. I made tea while Nora watered the plants near the back door. The evenings settled around the house slowly. No notifications buzzing. No sudden requests for help. No group messages demanding attention. Just ordinary sounds. A kettle clicking off. A chair sliding across the floor. Two people moving calmly through a space they chose. Before going to bed that night, I checked my email one last time. Most of the messages were work-related, but one subject line caught my eye. It was from someone I didn't recognize. Question about a similar situation. The message was short. A man from another city wrote that he had seen some of the wedding story circulating online. His younger brother had been dealing with something very similar in their own family. He asked if I had any advice. I read the message once. Then I closed the laptop. Nora looked up from the couch. Everything okay? Yeah, I said. Just someone asking a question. Are you going to answer? Probably tomorrow. She smiled. Good. I turned off the lights in the living room and stood by the window for a moment before heading to bed. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet again. The same quiet that had started the morning. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't thinking about revenge or embarrassment or even the wedding. I was thinking about the simple fact that my life finally felt like my own. If you enjoyed listening to this story, I'd really appreciate it if you took a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'm always curious where people are watching from. So leave a comment with your city and what time it is there right now. 2 other stories that listeners really enjoy will appear on your screen next. Until then, thanks for spending a little time here with me.